NASCAR is preparing to head to Talladega this weekend. Should be a big one. Kaz, are you ready for the weekend?
Of course, it's Talladega. It's always a good time. I don't know what to do with my hands.
Anything can happen at Talladega. Known for being unpredictable, this wild card race could bring big changes to the Cup playoffs. But for two truck drivers, their championship hopes will come to an end on the biggest stage in NASCAR. Welcome to the Pace Lap. I'm Jessie Punch. The weekend at Dover is behind us, and so is round one of the Xfinity playoffs. So now both the Xfinity Series and the Cup Series are in round two, while the trucks are facing their first cutoff this weekend at Talladega. And I'll have Kaz with me later on to chat a little bit about what we could see this weekend at such an unpredictable track as Talladega. And we'll also look at the changes to the point standings after Dover. But first, here's what happened in NASCAR's other series this past weekend. In the ARCA Series on Saturday, Christian Eckes dominated 171 of 200 laps at Lucas Oil Raceway. He took the lead for the final time under a late race caution, and he held it through the last 42 laps for his third ARCA win this season. The K&N Pro Series East wrapped up their season on Saturday in Dover. Ruben Garcia Jr. battled Todd Gilliland for the lead through the first 50 laps, but Gilliland made hard contact with the front stretch wall, ending his day at lap 50. Ruben Garcia Jr. controlled the remainder of the race, taking the checkered flag for the second time this season. The 2018 K&N Pro Series East title went to Tyler Ankrum. In just his rookie season, Ankrum has collected 4 wins and 9 top 5 finishes, finishing in the top 10 in all but just 2 races. The Xfinity Series wrapped up round 1 of the playoffs in Dover on Saturday. Daniel Hemrick started on the pole, but Christopher Bell jumped to the lead immediately on the start. He dominated the whole first stage. Bell, in just his rookie season, he's the points leader heading into this race with 6 wins already this season. To start stage 2 again on the start, Hemrick loses the lead, this time to Justin Allgaier. But Hemrick regains that front spot on lap 75, and he goes on to take stage 2. Daniel Hemrick second in the playoff points before this race. Christopher Bell took back the lead, passing Cole Custer on lap 133. Ross Chastain and Matt Tiff were battling hard each, hoping for that final spot in round 2. Chastain in the 4 bumped into the back of the 2 of Tiff, sending him into the 60 of Chase Briscoe. But ultimately, Tiff edged out Chastain for a spot in the next round. And with more than a half a second lead over Cole Custer, Christopher Bell crosses the finish line for his 7th win this season. And with this win, Bell breaks the record for most wins by an Xfinity Series rookie. Now 33 points above the cut line and on to round 2. With me now is the driver of the number 61 Ford for Fury Race Cars, Kaz Grala. Kaz, welcome back to the Pace Lab.
Good to be back. It's been a little too long.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. It's been a few weeks. You've taken on a pretty big venture since then, the Charlotte Motor Speedway Road Course, or the Roval, as they were calling it, and you did fabulous. Not only for first time on the track, but such a tricky course. Finished 8th and top 10 in both stages. What was that experience like?
That was probably one of our strongest races of the year. Actually, our first time finishing top 10 in all 3 stages. So that was a good points day for us. That's actually our best non-plate track finish of the year. So,
well, after this weekend in Dover, there was some exciting news coming out of the Xfinity race with Christopher Bell breaking the record for most wins by a rookie. And you've raced with Bell a good amount. Does that surprise you at all that he's shattered that record?
You know, not really. I was actually teammates with Christopher in late models over at KBM for a year, and so I've known him for a while, and he's a really good dude, and I was happy to see that for him. I think given the beginning of the year, you know, it took him a couple races to get his first win. I don't think anyone really saw this coming, and then all of a sudden he just turned it on, and he's been winning the last 2.5 months a lot of the races. So that was really cool to see it for him.
I want to check out the point standings after this race at Dover because this was the last race of round 1 for the Xfinity Series. Now things are about to reset as they prepare to head to Kansas, but this is what we're looking at right after Dover's race. Christopher Bell at number 1, 33 points above the cutoff. But what sticks out to me, at least from a non-driver's standpoint, is the difference in cutoff points after you get past Justin Allgaier. Really close there on the third 3.5. What do you think about that?
Well, I think, as you said, Christopher and Justin are probably pretty safe. I mean, I say that, but then you look at the first round, and Justin had a couple tough races, not really of his doing, just circumstantial, and that put him barely above the cut line going into Dover. So I'm not going to say they're safe, but they can at least just kind of take their time and try to have a clean round. But third through fifth is really what I'm looking at. I think Hemrick, Custer, and Sadler have all had enough speed this year to make the Final Four, but they can't all make the Final Four if you're going to keep those top 2 up there. So I think it's going to be a really interesting battle to see which 2 out of those 3 make it to the Final Four, and so it's really going to be exciting to see.
The Cup Series is well into round 2. They completed the first race at Dover this past weekend, so let's see how that went. Much like the first trip to Dover back in May, Kevin Harvick dominated, leading 286 laps and sweeping both stages. On track to take the checkered until he was forced to return to pit road under green for an extra tire change after breaking the valve stem off his left rear tire. A debris caution on lap 339 caught Harvick up to the lead lap, but he couldn't make his way back to the front. The 4 team, not the only one to struggle on pit road. Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. both suffered speeding penalties. Jimmy Johnson had issues with his car even before the start of the race, but a broken ball joint would end the day for the 11-time Dover winner. He finished 36th. The lead spot now in the hands of Eric Almirola. He led 45 laps until the 14 of Clint Bowyer also suffered a broken ball joint, sending him into the wall in turn 3 and bringing out the caution. Chase Elliott assumed the lead on the restart after staying out of the pits while under caution, but with just 3 laps to go, Almirola hits the wall on the backstretch, making contact with Brad Keselowski. And that collects a number of playoff drivers, including Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney, and Alex Bowman. This accident brought out the red flag and sent the race to overtime. More pit strategy from crew chief Alan Gustafson held the lead for the 9 team on the overtime restart, and Chase Elliott outran Denny Hamlin to the finish line, his second win this season. And with that, Elliott is the first driver to lock in his spot in round 3. Well, that was definitely an exciting way to kick off round 2. I think that ending had everyone on their toes, especially Eric Almirola. What do you think about that?
Oh, I felt bad for him. I mean, everyone dreams of having those days like he had and just dominating the race. And yeah, Harvick was really strong early, but Eric didn't make a mistake, and Harvick had a mistake on pit road, and sometimes that's what it takes to win a race at that level. And he was right in position, and even with all the strategy at the end, I really think that Eric still may have been able to win that race and probably could have without damage. And then, just driving it hard off 2 into the wall. I mean, I can definitely relate to that. So I felt bad for him, but I mean, obviously he's got a lot of speed, so I'm sure he's going to have another day like that soon.
Strategy is definitely the word coming out of the weekend because that was what really helped Chase Elliott big time. I know I was a little hesitant when I noticed that he was staying out. Do you think that was kind of a risky move on his end?
It was certainly a risky move. I can definitely say that track position and clean air at Dover is unbelievably important. So I knew when they made that call that it was probably a good one. I just didn't know how good. First place good, second place, third place, but he held on to it and even drove away a little bit in the closing lap. So that was exciting to see. I'm a Chase fan. I always like seeing him get a win.
I know Chase has one win this season, but with the repeat winners we've had, it is always kind of nice to see a fresh face in victory lane. Some news coming out of the weekend. You might have noticed the 95 car was driven by Regan Smith and not Casey Kane. Casey was not cleared after doing some health testing at Charlotte Motor Speedway to get back in the race car this weekend, unfortunately. And coming off of that news, he did announce this week on Twitter that he will be retiring from full-time racing because of the health problems that he's been going through. So it's unfortunate to see a driver like Casey go out with health problems, you know, not the way he wants to go.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he just announced so recently that he was retiring after this year, that gave him about the last half of the season to kind of enjoy that being your final time at each track. And so I definitely hate to see that shortened by health. He's had such a good career, such a long career in NASCAR. I wish it could have ended on a better note for him.
Some more news, though, coming out of the weekend. It was announced that Dave Rogers would take over as crew chief for the number 19 for Scott Graves, replacing him for the rest of the season. So Dave Rogers will be teaming up with Daniel Suarez to finish out the rest of the year. And more news for LFR is actually developed just this week, just Wednesday, and NASCAR.com reporter Jonathan Merriman is down at the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte to give us an update. Jonathan?
It was announced at the NASCAR Hall of Fame that Levine Family Racing would be partnered with TRD, that's right, Toyota and Joe Gibbs Racing next year in 2019. They also unveiled a new driver, Matt DiBenedetto.
No way my words can possibly describe it, and the emotion I've had, the last handful of days here. Amazing how everything comes back full circle because my career started with Toyota folks and TRD and Joe Gibbs Racing. We're going to perform, go out there, shock some people, show everybody what we're made of, and continue to grow this, pretty incredible team.
Bob raised his hand and said, listen, I want to be better. I want to build my team into a stronger organization. I'm willing to make the types of investments and make the type of partnerships to enable us to do that.
I think that next year in 2020, we're going to hope to make playoffs. That's what we work for, is that progression getting better every year.
No doubt Bob Levine setting lofty goals for his number 95 team. He has a lot of expectations. Playoff goal for 2020. Jessie?
So, Kaz, we had mentioned that there were some mechanical failures in the Cup race last weekend at Dover. Some unusual ones, I guess, to say the least, and we've since found out that they were ball joint failures. And I have a lot of questions why that I think you might be able to help me answer, but before I ask the why, let's talk about the what. I'll try to explain this. The idea of a ball joint is pretty simple. It's the idea that it's really just what's connecting the upper control arm to the steering knuckle. So it doesn't have a large purpose besides just connecting two pieces. But when it fails, it can cause a lot of damage. Why did we see this happen at Dover? This is such an unusual issue. Why did we see it happen at Dover and twice?
Well, it's extremely unusual, but in Bowyer's case, at least it made a little bit of sense because Dover is actually the highest load track of the year that NASCAR goes to. So everything on the car, even silly stuff, I mean, even the padding on your door inside the car, it has way more force on it than anything would at other tracks. So when you're gonna have a failure, it happens at Dover. But Jimmy Johnson's, his happened on the pace lap, so I was very confused as to how, I imagine there had to be some error or mistake in building that because obviously it hadn't gone through any sort of load yet. So I don't really understand that one, but I'm sure both teams will go back to the drawing board and figure out exactly what caused that, make sure that doesn't happen again.
Jimmy Johnson, though, on the topic of the 7-time champion, didn't have the best weekend at Dover, but he did have a little bit of fun at the track before the race even started. Coming off of the exciting finish from the week before, Cole Pearn was picking a little bit of fun at Jimmy Johnson, saying that he should buy some road bikes, because if you don't know, Jimmy is an avid cyclist. So Jimmy went out and he did just that. I don't know that they're necessarily road bikes, but they're cute.
Yeah, road bikes are expensive. I see where Cole was going with his suggestion. I don't quite think that this hit the mark for Cole, but man, was it funny.
If you can see, not only did he buy them, but he put them on top of the 78 team's hauler, which just makes it even better. They're on display. But Cole Pearn has a sense of humor as well, and he responded with a nice little sign there that says free bikes, but they tend to wheel hop.
That was clever. I mean, I thought Jimmy Johnson had it won when he showed up with those bikes, but I think Cole might have had the last word there.
It's nice to see, too, that even after the tough weekend, Jimmy Johnson can have such a great sense of humor about things. And I should note, too, that the bikes were given away to kids at the track that were there to watch the race. The drivers took time to sign them and let the kids take them and ride them around. So it was all in good fun, and I think everybody kind of won at the end of the day. The trucks are back in action this weekend at Talladega, finally wrapping up round one of the playoffs. So let's take the time to go ahead and look at the truck playoff points heading into the weekend. Justin Haley and Grant Enfinger both in on wins, but we could still see some pretty big things shake up this weekend at Talladega. What stands out to you when you look at these points?
Well, I think we can almost throw these points out the window because we're going to Talladega. So plus 18, plus 7, all the way down to minus 10, those are pretty small numbers when it comes to plate racing. So I really think anything can happen. I know these truckers have had a long time to think about it. I feel like their playoffs have already been going for 3 months and they're just getting to the first cut. So I'm sure you'll see some guys trying to overthink it going into a plate race, and that always ends in disaster. So I don't really know what to expect, but the one guy where I kind of feel pretty good about it, who's not locked in yet, is Johnny, because he's so good on the plate tracks, and I've been teammates with him. He's got a fast truck on him, so I think he'll be tough, especially with a plus 40 situation. I think he's pretty solid, but everybody else is going to be sweating bullets going into the race.
I like what you said about just throwing the points away, because it really is true. Talladega, anything can happen. In a plate track, a track that size, I mean, we could really see some things shake up heading into round two. The Xfinity Series will not be racing this weekend at Talladega, but the Cup Series will be in action, so let's check out these points heading into the weekend. Chase Elliott, coming off of the win at Dover, is the only driver right now that's locked in to round three. But there's kind of a lot to look at here. I don't know. It's like we just said, it's Talladega. I mean, I don't really know how to make a prediction for Talladega.
Chase is definitely the only driver that's going to be able to get any sleep between now and Sunday. Everybody else, I like these numbers in the 60s. I think they probably feel pretty good, even though it is a plate track. But you get down towards the bubble and 10 points, 12 points, is just not that much, especially when you're talking a plate track, because most races, if you're going to see wrecks, you'll see them in stage 3, right? You've already gained points in stage 1 and stage 2. At a plate track, you don't know. The big one could be lap 2, and that could take your chances away from getting any stage points.
Kaz, you have a little bit of experience at Talladega, I believe 2 races on that track. What do you remember from that being one of the biggest challenges of the largest track on the circuit?
I mean, for me personally, it seems to be luck. I haven't caught a break at Talladega, even though I've had such good luck at Daytona. Talladega is no different, and it just hasn't gone that way for me. But I think you'll see a lot of guys doing the same thing that they do at Daytona. It's a pretty, I want to say, normal style of racing, just looking at it. But then when you get under the surface, there's so much more to it, and it really takes a lot to contend up front in a plate race. So it's going to be a challenge for these drivers for sure. It's a lot of pressure in general running in a pack, because you can't make any mistakes or you're out and so are a bunch of guys around you. And that can really end your day in a hurry. But then you add in the pressure of the playoffs and the points situation into that. And this is probably going to be one of, if not the most intense races of the season.
Intense is the word for sure. Tension will be high, not only amongst the playoff drivers, but it's like you said, any driver that takes on Talladega is, it's a big one, it's a rough one. So it'll be a good weekend. But we also talked to Michael McDowell about this weekend at Talladega, and he took a few laps in our NASCAR Heat 2 simulator to give us his insight on what it's like to ride around Talladega Superspeedway.
Well, Talladega by yourself is pretty easy. You hold it wide open and you try not to hit anything and scrub speed. The problem is when you get into the race with 39 other maniacs and you're 4 wide, that's when it gets intense. But right now, while we're running by ourselves, you want to be pretty close to this yellow line without hitting it. Try to be smooth as you can. You don't want to scrub any speed. You look for the flags, see where the wind's blowing. so you know what your car is going to do. You see that American flag right there? Looking at that flag, finding the yellow line, trying to be smooth. I'm going to be a little lower than that. Not a whole lot to it by yourself. Pit road, very hard to get onto. Big transition, lots of bumps. And coming up the start-finish line. That's a lap, Talladega. Bam.
Some breaking news, major changes are being made over at Hendrick Motorsports for next season. Longtime crew chief Chad Knaus will no longer be working with the 48 car and Jimmy Johnson. Knaus and Johnson have been together for the entirety of Johnson's Cup career, 17 seasons. They've won 7 championships together, arguably one of the most successful driver-crew chief duos in NASCAR. Knaus will still be working with Hendrick though next season. He will be the crew chief for William Byron and the 24 team. And the crew chief for the 48 team next season will be Kevin Mindering, coming over from Junior Motorsports. Looking ahead, a lot of playoff implications on the schedule for this weekend. On Saturday, kicking off the weekend at Talladega with a huge race for the Truck Series, the final race of the first round of the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series playoffs. Also on Saturday in Roseville, California, the K&N Pro Series West is in action at All-American Speedway. And on Sunday, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series takes on the big one, the second race of the round of 12 in the playoffs, the wild card race of the second round. And wrapping up the weekend, it's the Whelen Modified Tour at Thompson Speedway. The final race of the season for the mods, Justin Bonsignor clinched the title at Stafford Springs with a 64-point lead. So he'll be officially crowned as the 2018 champion this Sunday. A lot of good racing this weekend, and should be a pretty exciting one, especially for Justin Bonsignor.
Absolutely. He's actually driving a Fury car, so it's a big weekend for us with his championship.
And it's always a good weekend when it's Talladega, am I right?
Of course.
Talladega, shake and bake. Well, that's all for our show this week. I'm Jessie Punch here with Kaz Grala. Thanks for watching. We'll see you at the track.